Hey everybody, welcome to Teen Life Group. This is our first Teen Life Group on the live stream YouTube channel. And so we're going to start a new study today. And probably 5 or 6 months ago, teenagers, you'll remember that we went through a chapter in the book of Proverbs, Proverbs 27. And I thought that was a really beneficial study for us. Then we started going through Revelation. And once we got put on lockdown and staying at home, we decided not to continue that via live stream. We will pick that up back once we get into in-person life groups. And so I've decided to start a new study. It'll be from the book of Proverbs again. We're going to be in Proverbs 18. And I'm just going to go verse by verse through this book or through this chapter. Really, and I chose that because I think it's a profitable study, but it's also something that we can kind of start and stop at any time. And so, the thing about the book of Proverbs is it's really hard to kind of outline that book. Most of the Proverbs are just one verse or two verses are linked together, and then it moves to a completely different idea. And so it's not easy to outline like any other book of the Bible that's a stories or that has the epistles or anything like that. So having said that, preaching through the book of Proverbs or through any proverb for that matter is difficult because it's such a short statement, and then you try to spend time talking about it. It can be kind of difficult to do. And but the problem with the book of Proverbs is that you don't understand the book of Proverbs. That's our problem. And a lot of times, I know when I was a teenager, I would go and read the book of Proverbs, and I would read 30 of them a day and not think about any of them. I mean, and I don't know if that's been your experience or not. When you read any of the Proverbs, we read them real quick because they're in a chapter, and then we don't take time to really think about any of them and it's hard to do because they're separate thoughts. Like one proverb is not connected to the other proverb that's in the same chapter a lot of the times, and so that can be a little bit of a problem for us in trying to understand the book. And understanding not just the book of Proverbs, but the individual ones. And so you guys remember our study in Proverbs 27. We just went straight through the chapter. We're going to do the same thing. We're just going to go through this until we get to meet back together again, which I'm hoping will not be too long. We probably will not make it all the way through chapter 18, but we're just going to go verse at a time, maybe 2 verses, depending on how it goes. And so you can go ahead and go to Proverbs chapter 18. Verse number 1, our title for today is A Fool's Fight. Okay, how many times have you ever heard that expression, a fool's errand? What is a fool's errand? A fool's errand is someone taking on a task that is 100% going to fail. Okay, it is not something that is going to be successful. It's a fool's errand. Okay, you're going on to try to do something that's not going to be successful. And it's kind of stupid for you to do that. You're a fool for trying to do it. It's a fool's errand. And so I took that thought and made it into our title. It's a fool's fight. A fight that is completely unsuccessful. And if you are engaged in this fight, you're going to be unsuccessful. You're going to be a fool, which is what verse 2 tells us. And so a fool's fight. Look at Proverbs chapter 18. Let's look at verse number 1, and then we'll open up in prayer. I'm actually going to read verses 1 and 2. We will talk about verse 2 next week. But let's go ahead and read verses 1 and 2. He who separates himself seeks his own desire. He quarrels against all sound wisdom. And then verse 2, a fool does not delight in understanding, but only in revealing his own mind. So these two are kind of coupled together. There's some thoughts I'll put together next week for you, but we're just going to focus on verse 1 today. A fool's fight, what he's quarreling with. And so let's go ahead and pray, and then we will jump into it. Let's pray. Dear God, thank you for today. Thank you that we were able to have church this morning, and just pray that you would continue to bless us as we try to start meeting back together again and start getting back into a normal schedule. I pray that you would be with us, and not just our church, but our community and state and nation as we start relaxing some of these restrictions, that we would not have a spike in sickness, or that we would have to take steps backwards in our plan, but that we'd be able to continue to open things up and continue to get back to normal and see each other. And so we're thankful that we were able to do that today. And I just pray that you would be with us right now as we start this study in Proverbs, that you would be with me, help me to give the understanding, and that I would be clear in what I say, and that we would be able to learn from this very practical book. And so just be with us, help us, and we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, so what I want to ask you first of all, before we even get into it, is that you would go ahead and commit. All right, and I probably should have said this before the prayer, but you need to commit to think about this proverb for you. Okay, this is the most practical book in the entire Bible. I mean, it just lays it out there. And you guys will remember from our previous study, the title of that study was Learning to Live Life Like a Boss, the Right Way. And the book of Proverbs tells us how to do it. Okay, and so the title of this study is Don't Be a Fool. Okay, so let's not be a fool. Let's learn how to live, and let's take these Proverbs. Every one of them, you need to take to heart for yourself. Don't think, oh, I'm not a fool. You will be surprised. All right. And I have been surprised, even from this first verse as I've studied it. And so the first thing that we want to do is we want to uncover the meaning of this verse. And so what I'm going to do is there are 4 words that I want to talk through and make sure you understand the meaning of those. And really, that is key to understanding any proverb. Is you've got to understand what those words mean and what pictures those Hebrew words give us. Okay, and that's not where our problem is. A lot of times we read them and we don't understand really the picture that the poet is giving us. And so we want to be able to understand those things. And so that's my goal, is to uncover the meaning for these and then say, okay, now that we know what it means, what does this look like in my life? So let's look at the first little phrase there. He who separates himself. Okay, what does this mean? First of all, this is someone who separates himself from other people. Okay, there are a lot of interpretations on what this verse means, and to be honest with you, the Hebrew behind this is kind of difficult. People have landed different places. We're not going to get into that. But this is talking about, the way I understand it, is a person who isolates himself, who distances himself or herself from other people. Okay, so that's what we're talking about. We're separating from other people. Okay, we're withdrawing from people. And the next thing that you need to understand about this word, and the English brings this out for us, is that it is a reflexive verb. A reflexive verb is a verb that someone does to themselves. Okay, and so you see it in the translation there, he who separates himself. So nobody is separating him from someone else. He is doing it himself. And so that's kind of what the word reflexive means. And we don't talk about it too much like that in English, but we have ways of getting that thought across in English, which is what we've done. He separates himself. So it's reflexive. It's something that he does to himself. And that's going to be important for us because this shows the person's attitude. Okay. Next is that you need to see that he is isolated from people. He isolates himself from people because he is following his own counsel. He who separates himself is seeking his own desire, and he's quarreling against sound wisdom. And so we're going to talk about this as we move through it, but he's isolated because he's not following conventional wisdom. He's not following after tried and true ways to live life or the way to do anything. It doesn't have to be a super spiritual thing. You know, Proverbs is an extremely spiritually practical book, but it's just practical in just everyday life. And this is not even a super spiritual, if you know what I'm saying, type of thing. It could be someone who takes his own counsel about how to try to fix something, and he's just being stubborn about it, and he's not following the right way to do it. Okay, he's following his own counsel, and finally here is that we've already said it's reflexive, so he's doing it to himself, but it's something that he is willingly doing and obstinately doing. He's stubborn, even when people try to intervene and try to talk some sense into this person. They don't listen. Okay, they They withdraw themselves. They isolate themselves. They don't listen to other people because they think that they know best. They think that they've got it figured out. They think they're right. And that hurts their relationships with people. And because of that, they isolate themselves. They withdraw. They separate themselves. Okay, so he who separates himself. Hopefully that, it's a pretty simple idea. A big thing is that he does it to himself, and he does it willingly and obstinately. He's stubborn. Okay, so now let's move to the second part of this phrase. He who separates himself seeks his own desire. Okay, so we're going to talk about that word desire. This is a word that means pleasure. It means something that is a lusting, something that is a longing. It is something that you desire. It's something that you delight in. It's something that you want. And it's not always used in a bad way. It's much like, the way I understand it, it's much like the New Testament term for lust. That's usually used in a negative way, but it's not always a negative word. You can have good lust, but usually when we use the word lust and we want to use it in a good way, we say desire, okay? And lust kind of has that bad connotation to it. But it's the same way with this word in the Old Testament. It's a pleasure. It's something that you delight in, something you long for, you lust after. It's not always bad, but it most certainly can be. And in this context, it is bad, okay? It's used in a negative sense. But it goes a little further than that, okay? And we really need to get this. This is the realization of these desires. Okay, so let me explain what I mean by that. Is that this is a person who seeks his own desire. He doesn't just desire the wrong things. Okay, she doesn't just take pleasure in the wrong things. This is a person who diligently seeks and goes after and gets those pleasures, those desires. They make their desires realized. They make them real. They get them. And so, like I said, there's a big difference in wanting something and then actually going and getting it. And so if you think about something negative or sinful that you want or desire, it's almost like you take it, it's like a different level to actually go and get that and participate in that or whatever it may be for you. And this person does this. Okay, this person separates himself. They seek their own desire. They're going after what they want, their pleasures. It is all about what they want. Okay, it's not. They don't have a care for other people, and so because of that, they separate themselves. Right? They think they know best. They're going after what they want to go after. It's all about them. It's all about what they want, and they don't really care about what other people think. They don't care about what other people want for them, or what other people want. They're not concerned with other people's desires at all. They're concerned about their own pleasure, and they're concerned about getting that. And they don't. You can see how that attitude is going to hinder your relationships with people. That's why this person separates themselves, because of this. Their struggle with other people. They've got the wrong mindset and they've got the wrong attitude, which we're going to see when we get down through this. And I've kind of said this here, but this is someone who goes after his own pleasure instead of following after the wisdom of the community or of other people. Now, let me just stop and just kind of say this. You need to be careful about going your own way, okay? And before we move on, I want to be careful that you understand what I'm saying, okay? Especially with young people. There is a desire to kind of kick against conformity. You don't want to be like everybody all the time. Like, if you go out and you get a brand new pair of shoes, you go to school or whatever, and 3 people have that same pair of shoes, it's probably going to dampen your spirits a little bit. It's like, oh man, just like that. There's a part about being a teenager that you want to be yourself. You want to be an individual. You want to stand out from the crowd. And that's not a bad thing, okay? It's not. And that is not what this is teaching. It is okay to do that, all right? And this is not talking about, let me say this. There are times in your life where you're going to have to be committed to do the right thing, to do what you think is right, regardless of what other people think, okay? The community may think a certain way about you if you make a certain decision. And if you think that decision is right, you've got to have the backbone to make that decision. even though the other people may, put pressure on you not to do that. That's not what this is talking about. What this is talking about is going after foolish pleasures, and you don't give a rip about anybody else. You don't care what they think. You don't care about them. That is what Solomon is warned against here. And so you need to be careful about going your own way. When you go against good, sound wisdom, which we're going to talk about in a second, you need to be extremely careful. So I hope that makes sense. Okay, it's not like you can't be your own person and make decisions apart from the crowd. It's different than that. Is the basis just your pleasures, and you're kind of stomping over people to get those things, and you're obstinately separating yourself from people. That's dangerous. So be careful about going your own way. I hope that makes sense. Let's keep going. We want to go ahead and get through this verse here. Okay, so he who separates himself seeks his own desire. He quarrels. Okay, so quarrels. This is a little bit of an interesting word. This is a word that means to be irritated, to be angry, and it's the same type of feeling that people get when they blow up at a game. During a game that they play. I actually saw this in one of my resources that I was looking at for this word. Is that it's like the irritation or anger that someone get of playing like a dice game or like a card game or something like that. And how many of you, be honest, how many of you get angry at board games? Okay. I was playing Monopoly Junior with my kids last night. And, we're having a good old time. Everybody's having a great time. And Caleb, bless his heart, runs out of money at his sister's hands. And so she takes his money. And I was like, Caleb, man, you're out. Sorry. And he kind of got bummed about it. I was like, or maybe you could, Monopoly, right? I was like, maybe you can make a little deal with Kara to where, you can stay in the game a little longer. He's like, no, if Daddy says I'm out, then I'm out. No, I'm out. I mean, he just kept on. And Kara was like, no, it's okay. Like, I'll do this. We'll do this little deal, and then we'll call it even. He's like, no, I am out. And he just is blown up. He's mad. That is that's what I thought about when I read this word quarrel. He's irritated. He's angry. He blew up. Okay. And so there's actually one old translation that translated this phrase. Instead of quarrels, they said shows the teeth. So it's kind of like, I am so mad. Okay. And then you get that mad face. They show the teeth. They're irritated. They're angry. And this is, again, you're in contention with someone or you're fighting against something. And next we're going to see what this person is fighting against. Okay. So we've already seen they separate themselves. He who separates himself, he is seeking his own desire. And then he's quarreling against something. All right. What is he quarreling against? Number 4 here, against all sound wisdom. That does not sound like a good way to live. Okay. But all right, let's talk about sound wisdom. And again, we're just uncovering what this means. Sound wisdom is one word in Hebrew. It is not the traditional word for wisdom. You teenagers should know, and anybody who's gone through our youth group should know, that wisdom means skill. That's kind of that idea. You have the ability to do something. You're skilled at making fabric. You're skilled at working with your hands. You are skilled at living life. You're wise. And so this is not that word. Sound wisdom is a word that is connected to an idea of to lift something up, a lifting, or something that is erected like a building. It's built. It's firm, and it's really showing the idea of something that is profitable or something that is useful. Okay, so it's not only talking about wisdom. Okay, it's broader than that. Okay, it is anything that is profitable or useful. Now, is wisdom profitable and useful? Absolutely. And primarily, I think that's kind of what it's talking about. You'll see here on our slide is that it is good counsel or solid wisdom. Okay, it's been proven. And so this is, people, you'll hear people say conventional wisdom. Okay, what does that mean? That means that is wisdom or a set of beliefs that is generally accepted as true or is the general way that people do things. It's the conventional way to do it. So does that mean you always have to live life the conventional way? And that kind of goes back to that being being individualistic and doing, being yourself. No, you don't always have to live life that way. But if that is the way that you live, and you go against solid ways of living, that is dangerous. Okay, um, there is, truth. Truth is not new. Okay, truth has been around for a very long time, and it hasn't changed. And for you to try to live life outside of the truth is, and then again, we're going on a very spiritual level right here. When you try to live life apart from that, you're going to have some problems. Okay, and so as far as that goes, you need to live life the conventional way, the tried and true way, which is the way God has revealed it for you to live. Okay, um, so this person separates himself. He seeks his own desire. He quarrels against all sound wisdom. This guy is fighting a fool's fight. He is fighting against the right way to live. Okay, and or even the right way to do something. Okay, um, again, this is a fool. And going back to the title of our study, don't be a fool. Okay, don't go against good counsel or solid wisdom in your life. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to give you some quick thoughts. I've got three of them about how we can apply this to our life. And so I've got three things, and I'm going to ask you some questions in them. So I'm not really going to make statements and points to you so far. I'm just going to ask you some questions, and I really want you to think about them, okay? Because if you answer these questions honestly, that's going to show you whether you are this type of person or not. And you may say, here's the problem, is that a lot of times we look at a verse like this, and we think, I don't separate myself. I'm not just seeking after just my stuff all the time. I'm not trying to fight against sound wisdom. And we kind of brush something like this off. But we've got to be careful, because this verse rings true, truer than you may think. And so just be honest with yourself. I've been honest with myself. I've tried to be, and this verse speaks to me. Okay. And I spoke a couple weeks ago at a men's Bible study, and I talked about a lot of times we come to God's word and it does not convict us. We're around it all the time, and we're exposed to it, but it doesn't do that convicting work, and it needs to. And so don't just let God's word go in one ear, not the other. Okay. So let's really think about these 3 points. All right. Be honest with yourself. Okay. Number one is this: don't respond to wisdom with hostile isolation. Okay, and again, before you just write that off, let's talk about a few questions. Okay, don't respond to wisdom with hostile isolation. First thing I want to ask you is this: do you think that you are always right? Think about it. Do you think you're always right? Because the person who lives according to the way this verse describes is a person who does think that they are always right. What do? They've separated themselves. They're seeking after their pleasures, and they're quarreling. They are showing the teeth and angry at sound wisdom. That's a person who thinks that they are right. And even against, again, tried and true ways of living life and doing things. Do you think that you are always right? There are times in my life where that describes me. All right. And what is that? That's pride. Pride pops up in my life just as it does everybody else's life. And, the thing about pride is, you ask my wife, Miss Laura will tell you, one of the things that gets on my nerves the most is when I see pride in other people. And then I know that I've got it too. And it's a difficult thing, because the problem is we love ourselves too much. All right. We are consumed with ourselves. And that's a mindset that is antithetical to Christianity. We should be at the bottom of the totem pole, not at the top. Do you think you're always right? Number two, does your thinking cause you to pull away from other people? The way that you think, I'm always right, or I am right in this situation, does that cause you to pull away from other people? And this is going to be really close to the third one, so I'll go ahead and give it to you. Do you get angry at others because of their opinions or ideas? Think about teenagers. Do you stomp off from your parents and shut the door? when they try to talk to you? You need to be real careful. What are you doing? You're angry, you're separating yourself, and you're quarreling with sound wisdom. You fit this verse if you do that. And to me, I mean, that's the first thing that popped in my mind is a struggle between a parent and their child. And but it goes the other way too. I mean, it goes with any relationship you have in life, and not just authority relationships like we talked about the other night in youth group. Any relationship you have, your friends. Okay, if someone's trying to speak truth to you and you just don't want to hear it, is that the way you respond? I'm just going to get away from this person. Well, you got to be real careful about that. No, okay, I know there's a time you need to step away from a situation and cool down and not get in the flesh. I get that. But habitually living that way is what this verse describes. He who separates himself, they seek their own desires, they seek their own pleasures, and they quarrel and get angry at sound wisdom. Okay? That's not the way we want to live. Don't be a fool. All right? So don't respond to wisdom with hostile isolation. Okay? Number 2 is this. Our second point is be pleasant, not pleasure seeking. Okay, now I hope you see how that works there. All right. If something is pleasant to you, then it is a pleasure for you. All right. You need to be a pleasure to other people. Don't be a pleasure seeker yourself. Okay. So be pleasant to others. Don't be someone who always goes after their things, what they want. Okay. And we talked about this with the first part of that verse, right? He who separates themselves, what do they do? They seek after their own desires. Okay. So the first thing is this, first question. Are you more focused on your pleasures or on doing what's right? What are you more focused on? What do you think about more often? Do you think about the things that you want, the things that bring you pleasure in your life? And those don't always have to be bad, but sometimes they are. And if they have the wrong priority, then they are wrong. What are you more focused on? Again, the person in this verse, they're separating themselves from a community of people who are trying to influence them, from a community of people who are living wisely. And they're isolating themselves from those people. That's dangerous. Here's a better way to think about it, all right? And be honest with this. Which do you go after more? Your desires or doing what's right? It's one thing to say you're focused on it, but which one do you actually go after? Remember that verse we talked about, that phrase? They make their desires realized. They don't just desire things, they get what they desire. They go after those pleasures. They don't just want them, they get them. And that can be a very, very dangerous way to live. Okay? Always getting the things that you want, especially those things that are harmful, dangerous, and sinful. Which do you go after more? Do you go after those pleasures and get those pleasures? Look at those pleasures? Talk about those pleasures? What is it for you? What happens? What do you go after and get more often? Pleasures? Or do you go after and get living right and doing the right things? This verse can hit home with you if you'll be honest with it. And we don't want to be pleasure seekers. That's what the person in this verse does. They separate, they seek their own desire. And the third question here is, how concerned are you with others? Remember we talked about, they are more concerned about going after their pleasures than they are about other people. They don't care about other people. You're not pleasant to other people. How concerned are you about others? And this is going to lead us to our third one, okay? And our last one. Point number 3 is don't make headstrong, self-centered decisions. And that's what this person is doing, okay? They are not listening to sound counsel and wisdom. They're actually fighting against it. They're separating themselves from that, and they're going after what they want to go after, okay? So this person does this. They do make headstrong and self-centered decisions, and that's what you don't need to do, all right? So 3 more questions, all right? You've heard me use this phrase a lot, but do you go against conventional wisdom? Do you go against tried and true ways to live life? Again, it's okay to do that every once in a while with certain areas of life, like how to fix your lawnmower. But as far as how to live life, are you going along with the tried and true methods that God has given us in His Word? Do you go against those things in your life? You need to be real careful about that. Okay. Letter B, number 2, however you want to look at it here. Is it your way or the highway? You guys know what that means, right? That means when you put forth a suggestion, people can either go along with that or they can leave. Is your way or the highway? This goes back to you think you're always right. Okay. And we got to be real careful with this. Okay. Do you listen to other people? All right. And we're going to hit this with our verse number 2 next week about listening to other people. All right. Let me read that verse for you one more time since it kind of fits right here. But verse number 2, Proverbs 18 says, a fool does not delight in understanding, but only in revealing his own mind. Okay. You always think you're right. You always want to get your stuff out there. And, hey, I've had to think about this stuff. Like I said, what is that? That's pride. And I don't need that to be in my life, and it doesn't need to be in your life. And so we need just to be honest with ourselves, okay? And then the last question is this, and for me, this is the best question, all right, out of the list. Whose interests are best served by your decisions? You think about the things that you decide, the things you do. Whose interest are you serving? Yours or somebody else's? Are you making self-centered decisions? Are you making headstrong, just stubborn decisions? That is the person that this verse describes, that this proverb describes. So, do you get to pick, you try to pick the easiest way to live life, the easiest things to do to make everything easy for you, and you could care less if the hardships fall on other people? Are you willing to do things that are hard so that other people don't have to do those things? And that's hard to do because we want the easy road, all right? How do you live? What decisions are you making? What things are you doing? And whose interests are best served, yours or others? All right. So we need to don't respond to wisdom with hostile isolation. We need to be pleasant to other people, not pleasure seeking ourselves. And then we don't need to make headstrong, self-centered decisions. All right. We don't need to be someone who separates ourselves, seeks our own desires, and then quarrels against sound wisdom. All right. We need to be people who are fighting the good fight of life. Okay. Fighting the fight for Jesus Christ, not fighting a fool's fight that is going to be 100% unsuccessful. So don't be a fool. Okay. You're going to hear me say that a lot over the next couple of weeks, okay? So some of the examples in Proverbs 18 are like today, a negative example. Don't be like this. There are some good examples that say, hey, you need to be like this. And I hope it'll be a blessing to you. I hope you've enjoyed our study, our verse, and I hope it'll be something that you'll think about. And I hope that you will think about this, all right, and all of these things. So see, now, do you see the benefit in slowing down and not just reading all of Proverbs 18 and then just close your Bible and have done your devotions for today? We've spent 30 some odd minutes talking about one verse, and we've done our best to try to understand what it means and then what that looks like in our life. And listen to me, when you can come to the book of Proverbs that way and figure out what those things mean, you will be a wise person if you live by them. So I hope that you'll do that. Hey, listen, you can study the Bible like this. All right. I mean, part of my job is to do some of that and to give you that information and to feed you those things. But you can study the Bible like this on your own. All right. There are all kinds of things out there that are completely free that you can look at and that you can study and that you can learn what these Proverbs mean. I mean, you could take a whole year in the book of Proverbs and just plow through them, one or two a day, and really get what they mean and really try to commit those things to heart and start living by them. And that would be a lifetime's work to live out the book of Proverbs. So That's one verse. So I hope I see you guys. Hope I'll see you next Sunday. And Lord willing, we'll be back in youth group on Wednesday nights soon, and then back to life groups, and we'll finish out Revelation. But until then, we'll continue to have, we will have Marco Polo this week for teenagers. It'll be 7 o'clock again, and we'll do that until we go back meeting in person on Wednesday nights. That'll be phase 2 of our church plan. So you guys have a good night. Miss you guys, and looking forward to seeing you again soon. See you.